Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a special edition of Lido Loca Live. Actually, it's Cruise Nerds Cruise News Live here on a Thursday night. I was hanging out at the house today here down in Florida, and I said, I haven't talked to in a while. I haven't talked to my buddy Don, and we chop it up sometimes about the news through text message, and I said, man, it'd be fun to do that with you guys. And what would be more fun than adding somebody else to the mix? So tonight we're going to be chopping it up with Don and our friend from Creston, Canada, BC. I don't know where that is. Our friend Bruce from Traveling with Bruce. Let me kick it over. We'll say hello to our friends from the north. Here we are. There he is, seated in the house there. Don Terrace. What's up, sir? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. How's everybody out there?
You look good. That's Don from Don's Family Vacation. And then that handsome young man below us, that is Bruce, Traveling with Bruce, the hardest working YouTuber I know, getting it done on the West Coast. Bruce, how you doing tonight? Glad to have you.
Great to be here, Tony, Don. Good to see you guys. Loving life.
Well, we got a crowd out here, and before we can get even going, I just want to say thanks for a couple super chats. Todd Upton, even before the show started, dropping a little super chat. Thank you so much, Todd Upton. And there was another super chat, and it disappeared. Oh, hold on. There it is. Angela Selzer. Thank you so much for the super chat. Now, the format is fast and loose tonight. We're just going to be talking about the cruise news. Now, these gentlemen have acquiesced. They've said that there's not much cruise news to talk about, but you guys know there's a lot of cruise news to talk about. Let's start it off. I'm going to be the MC. These gentlemen can throw questions at me also, but I'm going to be the MC. Let's start with you, Don. Over the last 2 weeks, what's the biggest news story that you've covered?
I think, well, at least the most promising one is obviously Royal Caribbean and Norwegian getting that team together to finally try and come up with the opening guides, right? That they can turn into the CDC and get permission to open up again. So I think that the people they have on that panel right now, it's hard for the CDC to come back and say, we disagree with anything they say, because they have former CDC representatives on it, foreign governors, the head of a major. What am I thinking of now? Not for some reason, cosmetics came into my head. You know what I mean? Not a drug company, uh, but that is obviously the big story out there now. And now the thing is to see how long it takes the CDC to respond to anything that they bring up.
All right, so here's my question on that, Don. Do you think they stack the deck just to get the approval, or do you think these people have some salt to them? And before we go too much further, Bruce, I'm getting just a little kickback from you. I don't know. Do you have any earbuds that you could throw in?
Yeah, I might. Yeah.
I think as our conversation gets more animated, I think we're pushing through your speakers. When we were just talking casually before the show, we didn't quite push through your speakers, but you know how Don is. You know what I'm saying?
Us loud Canadians, we're always so boisterous.
All right, I'll keep it with you for a second, Don. What do you think? So, do you think it's purely a stack the deck kind of play, or do you think these people are going to have some good recommendations? And why not just take the European recommendations?
Because every country is different, right? Right now, Europe is not quite as being hit as severe as, say, North America is right now. So they have a little bit less, they're opening up more things. They have different policies. Some of the countries down there didn't even shut down. Like Sweden didn't even shut down. They just remained everything open. So different policies. You can't just take what they say down there in the EU for what we're going to say, because North America is different and the cruising is different. There's far more cruise ships here than there are in Europe, by far. So they built these. What I liked about this panel is some of the people on there only agreed to be on the panel if all the information was shared. It was not allowed to be just stuck with Royal and Norwegian. They had to be allowed to share it to everybody in the industry. So they wouldn't have even participated if they weren't allowed to do that. So I thought that was a really good thing.
All right, I will accept that. I do. I read through all 49 pages of that EU
Yeah.
thing, and I really do think that we're going to see a lot of bleed over of those
Definitely.
policies into North American cruising. Uh, the only thing that worries me is like, we talk about using the same standards. I would almost think that maybe we could use some of that stuff because now they're going to redo. They're going to redo all the work. Let me check back here with Bruce. Bruce, give us the hot take. What do you think? Why can't we just use the European standards? And do you think this whole stack in the deck is more for show, or is there actually something going to happen out of it?
Very good question. I hope I'm coming in okay. I don't have any headphones that'll work with this setup.
That's all right. We can hear
Yeah,
you.
the European thing versus the U.S. thing. Uh, you know, I keep thinking to myself that the one thing that has to happen is that the CDC has to lead the way, and they should be dictating to the cruise lines just how it's going to go down, rather than the cruise lines try to take it the other direction. But what puzzles me is that the CLIA has delayed cruising until the 15th of September voluntarily. And the CDC has kept their date, I think, as July 24th without
Yep.
without moving up to September 15th. And now we have this blue ribbon panel with the two of the major cruise lines trying to come up with something. Carnival is on the outside looking in. I don't know what's going on there, and I'm just not sure who's actually leading the charge. I would really like to see. I would think the CDC basically say to all parties through the CLIA, perhaps, guys, this is how it's going to go down. These are the dates. These are the rules. The Europeans are going to have their rules. The problem, of course, is you've got the EU, you've got Britain, who's trying to get away with Brexit. You've got the rest of the other Mediterranean countries that may or may not be on board with all of these health authorities in Europe. It's like herding cats. And I think these cruise ships, one of the advantages, of course, is they can go anywhere they want. One of the disadvantages is they can go anywhere they want to go, and they may not be in the same jurisdiction the entire time that they're at sea.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. The one thing I did hear from Carnival is they were actually scheduled to have a summit today, a health summit, COVID summit, and they delayed it, and now it's going to be at the end of this month. I don't know if they're delaying it to after the expiration of the no sail date. I registered for the thing, and as soon as I registered, it said, yes, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be the end of the month. They didn't give a date. And so that's kind of interesting to me. I'm kind of with you now, just from an organizational perspective. I'm not sure how prescriptive the CDC could be for the cruise line since they're not in the nuts and bolts of the cruise business. I do believe they could provide some sort of framework for the cruise lines to work inside of, and that's probably the guidance that they should give. But yeah, I'm with you. I like the fact, and Don mentioned it, I like the fact that the NCL RCL thing is going to be open source. They use that computer terminology, open source, that everybody can use it. But again, there's nothing worse in organizations than when you've got 6 or 7 sets of people doing the same thing. That's what I see with the cruise lines. It's Carnival's gonna be like, is mine okay? And RCL will be like, is mine okay? And then the European side will be like, is mine okay? What you brought up that I thought was really interesting is, cruising doesn't have to happen. There's a big pushback whether or not cruise lines are American companies. They're pretty much not, right? They're registered other places. Ships are registered other places. But the reality is the majority of cruisers are North American United States cruisers. So I don't think that the cruise lines can just pick up their ball and go play somewhere else, because I think their largest customer base, their keep them in business customer base, their grow their business customer base are United States. But yeah, I think they're disadvantaged. This is what I'm curious about. Royal is going to give their recommendation. The Royal, the blue ribbon panel, whatever this thing's called, they're giving their recommendations on the 31st of August, and that runs 15 days prior to the CLIA date. So it's like, how if you have a solid recommendation of changing out all the ventilation systems at the end of August, there's no way cruising starts in 15 days. So that's the thing that's got me scratching my head. I don't know. and then Carnival's the biggest. So, are they going to lead the way? Will they scrap these policies? What do you think, Don? Don, should it be CDC first, or should it be cruise lines? What do you think the CDC should lead, or the cruise lines?
Well, the trouble is, no matter what the cruise lines say, it's the CDC that has the final word.
Right.
They're the ones who are going to say whether or not the ports are going to be allowed to open or anything like that. So no matter what the cruise lines say, the CDC at some point has to open up their mouths and say something. The only thing they've ever said so far is don't cruise. That's the only thing that's ever come from the CDC. There's been no guidelines, no recommendations, no nothing. And that's my problem with them. They're supposed to be leading the way. I mean, they came out with that. You might have seen some of my videos. They come out with that red light, green light system for the crews on the ship. It took them 3 months to come up with that. My granddaughter could have come up with that in a half hour. I mean, come on. That was not rocket science. It really isn't.
I'll play the devil's advocate here. I mean, they were dealing with a nationwide pandemic, and cruising is just a small part of that. But maybe I'm giving them too much leeway. But I don't know. It was a challenge to get people off of cruise ships, right? The cruise lines didn't want to sign off saying they wouldn't use commercial airlines, so I'm willing to pile on to the CDC, but I saw a lot of stuff going on at the same time that not necessarily, it didn't seem like they were both given on both sides as far as that crew repatriation deal.
Repatriation, yeah.
It's some of the things that went, like they literally put more restrictions on those crew members to travel than they did anybody else in the world.
Right.
That's right.
And that was the problem. It wasn't a 14-day quarantine for them. It was a 28-day quarantine for them. It was too. The cruise lines would have went completely bankrupt trying to send everybody home on private jets the way they were scheduled to do it. And that was unfair to those crew members. That was completely unfair.
So what do you think? Now, it's interesting. Enough time has passed that I cannot think of the princess ship in Yokohama. What was the one that started it all called?
Diamond Princess.
Diamond Princess.
Yeah. So do you think Diamond Princess and Ruby Princess, do you think the negative press that came along with that, do you think that's what really caused these restrictions more so than actual worry about the spread of the virus?
Good question. I know that those two ships, I mean, the Diamond Princess, we all know, all three of us, that ship was on the national news every day for 6 weeks. And it was on the national news in the US, the United Kingdom, because of all the UK travelers, here in Canada, and around the world. And it was an absolute free-for-all. And of course, for us, the three of us as YouTube creators, it became a nightmare, because if we even uttered the word, virus, we ran into all kinds of problems with YouTube. And we couldn't all of a sudden talk about what we talk about for a living without getting into possible trouble with this whole thing. Talking about this repatriation deal, I mean, I just did a story, 3 days ago, I talked about the Virgin Voyages ship, the Scarlet Lady, who has not yet had a single paying passenger on board that ship since she was launched. They took that ship back to Italy and dropped off 237, I think it was, crew members back to Italy for European repatriation, because they weren't allowed to bring the ship into Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Port Canaveral to get them onto an airplane to fly them home. And this is after the so-called color-coded, ranking system and all this nonsense. It's an absolute mystery to I think, at least to myself. I'm trying to cover this business, and I don't know what the CDC is doing with that. That kind of came and went, and there is no. I think you guys are nailing it on the head. There is no actual leadership being shown right now by one entity to take this thing over. I'm wondering about the U.S. Coast Guard. What's going on with those guys? The U.S. Coast Guard controls every vessel in and out of ports. They control ports. The CDC does the surprise inspections that we've delighted in talking about in our past years. The three of us I know have talked about CDC surprise inspections on cruise ships. And now the CDC is supposedly looking out for the health of the American traveler. As it is right now in Florida, I don't know how any international airplane can land in Florida with passengers from Europe because of what's happening in the state of Florida as it is. So getting to the ship is half the fun. I don't know how anyone can get to a cruise ship in Florida and then getting off a cruise ship. And here's another one, last thing I'll mention. Just imagine you're on a 1-week cruise in the Caribbean, and you're coming back to Miami, and the day before you come back, you find out that out of the 3,000 passengers, 5 are testing positive. What happens now? Does the Coast Guard step in and make that ship sit 10 miles off the coast of Florida for 2 weeks? Does the CDC step in and make this a quarantine thing? Do we have another Diamond Princess scenario right off the shore of Miami? I don't know. And would you want to book a cruise knowing that could be a possibility?
I do have some thoughts on it. Let me take a second and give a shout out to the people out there doing the super chats. It does not go unnoticed. I'll run through them real quick. Thank you, Peggy and Art. Super special super chat for a special edition of La Lido Loca. Thank you so much. Brian Vacci, thank you so much for the super sticker. You rock, sir. Gene Hughes, thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks for supporting what we're doing here tonight. And I think there is one more. Tom Nelson, hi guys, is Don going on the La Lido Loca group cruise to Alaska? I know at one point there was mention of it. Also, Don, we're hoping that you feel well, from Tom and Beth. Thank you for the super chat, Tom. Thank you for putting Don on the spot. Don, are you booked on the La Lido Loca group cruise to Alaska? I knew what the answer used to be, but now our little trade-off is not in play anymore. So let's see what you say.
I'm not booked right now, but I am still planning on going.
Oh,
in
nice.
fact, my crew, I'm doing back to back on my group cruise because there's some people who want to do the return trip from Alaska. So we're going to do a 14-day together. And then I'm going to take the train down to Seattle and jump on your ship that leaves the very next day. So it worked out well that way. So that is still the game plan, yes.
All right, you will see Don on the La Lido Loca Alaska cruise. Thank you, everybody, for the super chats. We appreciate it. Thanks for popping in on a Thursday night while we chop up the news. Bruce, to your point, I think that is – so just me looking at it, just me reading the tea leaves, I think what we saw – and we saw it day after day of everybody trying to pass the buck, right? I really felt like cruise ships were trying to let people off without saying much, and then hoping they got back home without being sick. And then we saw port authorities letting people get out of the port. Hopefully they got home without getting sick. We saw airports let people fly, not really checking, hoping they got home and got sick. And then it became a whole, well, whose fault was it? And I really do think that's why the CDC is looking for the cruise lines to come up with their own policies and procedures, because nobody wants to hold the bag. And I think they want to take it right back to the initial point, to the cruise lines, and say, look, this is your business. This is where you're profiteering. You're using our ports for money, and you're using our country to get customers. And I think you have to hold the bag. So I think all those questions of what happens if there's an outbreak on a cruise ship, what happens if somebody is sick, I think the cruise lines are going to have to come up with the equation on that. And then, unfortunately, I think the CDC can sit in the judgment seat and go, okay, yeah, or okay, no. I think it really makes the return to cruising kind of dicey, because that's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah, well, Tony, you're right.
Let's transition a little bit to some more fun topics. What are the things you don't want to have to do on your cruise? We make these stories and we tiptoe around it sometimes, and sometimes we hit it straight on. When it comes to some of the recommendations, physical distancing, face coverings, skipping the buffet. What are some of these things that make you? Is anything going to keep you guys from cruising? Any of these restrictions, or are you guys going to go with the flow? I'll let you go first on that, Bruce.
Well, I tell you, I have thought back over the years that I went cruising, and the one thing that really turns me on to going on a cruise ship is the fact that I can unwind from the regular world in which I live, and prior to becoming a YouTuber, of course, and just hang out and chill out on a cruise ship. And one of the things that I love to do was to upgrade my booking and get my hands on one of those adult-only spa passes where I can go into that spa at the front of the ship or wherever it's located, use all the facilities anytime I want, and make a routine of it every day. First thing in the morning, after breakfast, I'm heading for the men's room there for the steam bath, for a jacuzzi, the ceramic lounger, the whole adult unwind experience. And if we are going for a shore excursion for 3 or 4 hours, we take that in a little later. And then after we get back from that, head back to the spa for the afternoon, shower and spa and another nap if necessary before dinner. The way it's going now, what I see being proposed and the way it's happening with social distancing, indoor pools and hot tubs possibly being drained and shut right down. Ceramic loungers cannot be moved because they are stationary. They're bolted into place on board these ships, and they're heated by electronic. We can't do anything with those. I can't see how the adult spa pass survives. I think that they shut that down. I don't know. I guess they will allow massages to be taken place if you book a massage, but that'll be a one-on-one scenario, perhaps even done in a cabana setting on an upper deck, perhaps even outside. But that indoor spa area that is such a big moneymaker for the cruise lines, that's toast. And to me, that's a deal breaker. That to me is a 6 days out of 7. I'm going to use that once or twice a day because I am changing my lifestyle for the week that I'm on the ship. I don't have a normal week on the ship at all. It's pamper time.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Don? What any of these restrictions make you not want to cruise, or are you so ready to get out of the house you're going to do it all?
Well, I'll still get out of the house, but the thing that always draws me to cruising is such a social thing. Cruisers get along on vacation probably more than anywhere else you'll find in the world. Everyone is cooperative most of the time. Everyone's in a good mood, and very rarely do you see conflicts too much on the cruise ships, right? Well, now you start throwing in, you got to space everybody out. Different dining times. The game shows might not happen anymore because, how are you going to play Family Feud if you have to stay 6 feet apart from the strangers that are there? All this kind of stuff. It becomes not a social gathering anymore. It becomes you're going on a cruise by yourself and you're staying by yourself. Even they're talking now in some places about when you go for dinner, only your group can sit at the table together. Well, I travel solo. Does that mean I get a table for 8 all to myself? I don't know. So that part really annoys me. And I will admit, here in Canada, we just here in Ottawa made face masks mandatory. We have 3 cases of the virus in Ottawa for the last month almost. 3 cases. Suddenly we need masks everywhere we go. So there is a pushback here because we're saying, why? Like, it's not big. We have 3 cases in all of Ottawa, 1 million people, 3 cases. If I was in Florida, I would have that mask on everywhere I go, right? Because it's breaking out. But if you don't see it, you don't want to wear it. And I wear it now because it's mandatory. I'm following the rules. I don't like it. I do not like wearing a mask. I will admit it. I do not like it. And I cannot picture myself on the cruise ship having to wear that 50% of the time. In the theater, in the casino, going to a game show, going to dinner, embarkation, getting ready to get on a boat for disembarkation I just don't know if it's worth even doing anymore. So I would probably try it, And if I don't like it, I might be doing land vacations for a little while or not going anywhere until this is over.
I mean, you bring up a good point, and so kind of in my mind, I'm like, I'm fairly okay being isolated, and it's really made me question how I would change the way I cruise. I would definitely have a balcony every time, which I know you normally cruise with a balcony. I feel like my cruising experience would be a lot more solitary. I would be bummed out. I would wear a mask in the theater and be physically distant so that I could watch a show. But I'm with you. I don't love wearing the mask. I do it, because I believe it helps, and it helps people be safe. And so I do wear the mask, and I would do it just so that I could cruise again. But I do feel like I would be less social, if that's even possible, on a cruise ship. I think I would find more time to be alone, where I didn't necessarily have to mask up and have to be distant. I think I could still have a good time on a cruise. Again, give me a balcony, give me some isolated places. I do like that aspect of it, but I like to go to shows and I like to go to the casino, and all that could be drastically changed. I think personally, I think that's going to be a challenge for cruise lines everywhere, that you're going to have pushback against some of these procedures, and then who's going to enforce them? This is the thing that worries me: is some poor guy that's on a 6-month contract, working a million hours a week, is he going to have to now police whether people are socially distanced and wearing face coverings? And look, you can just go around the internet and just see people freaking out at Costco over having to wear it. Could you imagine having to work in an environment like that, in an environment where they're already saying you're going to have to clean twice as much? These poor people are going to be worked like crazy, and now all of a sudden they're going to have to police the mask. They're going to have to come up with another system. Bruce, I want to ask you about how you police the mask, but I do want to give some love to the people giving us super chats. Thank you so much to Paper City Gamer. My chat jumped. Let me get back to it. I don't want to miss it. Paper City Gamer Jeff, watch all three channels. Fun to see us together. I'm enjoying being with these fellas for sure. Tim LF 95. I need better glasses. TLM, you know who I'm talking about. Thank you, Tony, Bruce, and Don, for keeping us entertained and informed. Love all your vlogs. Thank you for the super chat. Chuck Spencer in the house tonight. Late time, the party, and just paying my dues. Thank you for the super chat, sir. And I believe the Ship Show is in the house. What is up, Ship Show? Thank you so much for the super chat. Ship Show says, I worry about how people react to the regulations once on board. It's easy to agree with the regulations beforehand. It's another thing on board, and you're being told what to do. Wow, very apropos. It's exactly what we're talking about. What do you think, Bruce? Who's gonna police the mask wearing on the cruise ship?
Man, I'll tell you. I think back to the cruises I've been on, and I think about the staff that I interacted with, and my room stewards, they've always been just great people, and then your waiters and waitresses, and then the staff at the spas and everywhere else. The only folks that I think have the ability to really make an enforcement would be security guards, the guys with the spray to spray your eyes, or with the billy club to keep you honest. And I would just I would be instantaneously wearing a mask if I'm told to. I mean, I want to break a rule on board a ship, but geez, you think about. Are we going to go out on a cruise with a cruise ship at 100% capacity like we did back in 2019? I can't see it. I don't know how a cruise ship like, say, the Bliss, that can handle, 4,200 people, there's no way they're going to allow the ship to go out, and with all those inside rooms and ocean view rooms and balconies. I see capacity down by maybe as much as half. Which, on the one hand, okay, if only half the ship is full, then it's easier to social distance anyway. It would be easier for the crew to control the clientele. With, with the frustration level, what I worry about is you're in the casino, and a couple of folks are having one too many, and they've just had it up to here with being told what to do, and then the fight breaks out. And I love nothing more than to make a video about a fight on a cruise ship. That's great for the ratings, but I wouldn't want to be on the cruise ship when something like that takes place, when people just lose it, because that just makes it no fun whatsoever. So yeah, this idea of making the staff now take on the responsibility of having to be the police when it comes to all the rules and regs. And I don't. The other thing I don't want, and I kind of guess you guys are going to be in the same boat here. Do you want to hear a message every 5 minutes over the PA telling us about social distancing and all the rules, and especially when people start breaking the rules, that they keep reminding us and reminding us and reminding us? Now this is not a fun holiday whatsoever. Now it's a nuisance. So anyway, that's just my take on it.
No, I agree with that. I hadn't even thought of that. I kind of get annoyed sometimes with just the regular announcements, and now you're going to have a whole second set of announcements. Some have speculated. So to your point there, Bruce, I did read just one quote today in one article, and I couldn't find it. Maybe it's in that interview with Richard Fan and Mr. Del Rio, but I did see something from Del Rio saying that if they had to sail with ships at not a very full capacity, that it would be very troublesome for them. So I know the cruise lines are trying to figure out everything possible, not really to reduce their capacity, which of course the EU documents got them reducing capacity. So we'll have to see. Don, let me ask you this: cruises to nowhere. Would you be for that if we can't go? I think that these cruise ports, now there's some cruise ports like the Bahamas, they really need the tourism dollar. They want people there. Alaska's hurting this year because of no tourism dollar. But I think cruise ports are going to be leery of letting cruise passengers off in the beginning. Do you think cruise lines should try to do cruises to nowhere, just cruise to their private islands? Would that satiate? Would that satisfy you as a cruiser, or would it be less than the cruising experience?
Well, I'm a person who loves, depending on what you can do on a cruise ship. If there's no game shows and no entertainment and no sitting on the pool deck and no spas, then no, a cruise to nowhere is not going to do any good. If you can do half decent amount of things on the cruise ship, I am a very happy camper out on the ocean. I love being out in the ocean. And why not set up some cruises around some very majestic views? Look at Norway cruises and along the coast of, the White Cliffs of Dover. Places like that, Hawaii, Fiji, Alaska. There's so many beautiful scenic places out there. You don't need to land to have a good time. You can see those scenes just getting close by, right? So yeah, I would be okay with that, and that's the kind of cruise I would probably book: the Hawaiian Islands, Fiji, Alaska. But a lot of it depends on if I'm going to be just sitting in my room for 7 days because there's nothing else to do. I can sit in my room at home and save $3,000. So that's probably what I would end up doing.
Great point. And something I never really thought of. Almost see if the ocean liners can act like river cruises, right? Like one of the appeals of river cruises is the scenery. That's a great idea. I don't know how it works out super well in the Caribbean, which is where a lot of people are going to go, because basically you just get to see the ocean and then see the islands. But I do like the idea of a cruise to nowhere where there's some sort of something to look at. Let me jump back out to the chat real quick. I don't want to miss anybody. Thank you, Abby Soriano, for the super chat. Huge fan of Tony and Don, and now I'll be adding Bruce to that list. Bruce, your sub count just went up, buddy. This is great, gentlemen. Thank you for the super chat. Billy Matson, Don, you should try a gator mask. Easy on and more comfortable to wear. That's like one of those things that you can just pull up. I don't know if you've seen those, Don. Alexis Lewis, going on the MS Seaside in March. We should be by full capacity then. Seaside's a great ship. Don and I can both attest to that. We were on there together. The one thing I'm excited about all of this changes is I do believe that I should be able to beat Don in the socially distanced world at bowling. So I'm not thinking that I will lose any more at bowling in this new paradigm. I could be overstating that, but that's... the laughter from Bruce makes me think maybe I am overstating that. I don't know. But how about this?
Tony.
Let's keep. Oh wait,
Tony,
hold on. Let me unmute your mic. Don. Oh wait, I muted your mic. Sorry. Are you saying something? Hold on. Wait. Okay. Technical difficulties.
The only way you're going to beat me at bowling is if we social distance so much I'm not on the ship.
That's right. How about that? We social distance you right out of the alley. How about that? No, so let's keep the controversial topics rolling. The research has shown that there's an age group and a group of people with pre-existing conditions, and I would be one of them, I'm overweight, that maybe should not be allowed on a cruise ship. And I know that that's getting people in their ire up a little bit. In the EU document, there is some sort of talk about if you're of a certain age, you should go to your doctor first and maybe show up saying that you're fit to sail. How the heck is this going to work anywhere? People say age discrimination. I would guess, condition discrimination. Do you think this is even going to happen? Or doctor's notes and excluding people? Can cruise lines handle that kind of restriction? Don, kick it off.
Well, if you're going to ask cruise lines to, you have to be a medical form to go on a cruise. How come you don't need the same medical form to go stay at a resort or a theme park or fly on a plane for 16 hours? So, yeah, why is it only the cruise ships, right?
Yeah.
So I completely just on a quick, remember we were just talking about the CDC and leadership a little while ago, and have you noticed that the theme parks are opening and the planes are now no longer flying like with the middle seat missing? They've now started filling. CDC hasn't said a word. There's no flight restrictions. They're not telling them what to do. They're not telling the theme parks that they have to reclose or anything with 11,000 cases in Florida after Universal opens up recently. But hey, they're not saying a word on the sea for the cruise lines, but they're telling them they can't do their job. And that's the only business out there that they are telling them you cannot open, period. And so to have age restriction, no. You'd have to start. Do you need a doctor's note now to go to the grocery store? At what point do you say enough is enough?
Good points, Don. Good points. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, I've been. This is a hot topic on my channel for sure. I'm going to be 65 this year, so I'm passing that magic threshold into seniorship level. And I'm wondering whether I need to get a doctor's note to take a cruise. And what I'm wondering about is how can a cruise line determine the authenticity of a doctor's note? Do they pre-clear certain doctors to be able to write them, or certain organizations? And what if I go to one of these doctors for a note, and the doctor says to me, "Oh yeah, it's $500. That's what I charge because I'm on the short list to give you that note. You can't get on the cruise without my note, and so it's $500." And I'm thinking, hey, I'm wide open for being abused here, being taken advantage of. But on the other side, the cruise lines, to defend them, I guess, they're gonna. How do I produce to them the doctor's note anyway? It's not like I talk to a human being when I book my cruise. If I'm going through a travel agent, it's over the phone or it's on email. If I'm talking to the cruise line directly, it's through their email site. I guess I could take a picture of it with my phone and then text it to them or something like that. But how do they know that that's authentic and real? How do they know that the doctor is actually a doctor? That's another matter. And then here's the other one. Pretend you're the doctor, okay? And you give me a note, and I go on a cruise, and I get sick on the cruise, and I come back sicker than a dog, and I talk to my lawyer, and I tell my lawyer, I got really sick. I need to sue somebody because, I could use some extra money. And the lawyer says, why don't you just sue the doctor that wrote the note? Because right there, someone got their autograph on how healthy you were, and it was obviously not the case. And does this start a whole nightmare of litigation possibilities between cruise lines, doctors, patients? I mean, it just adds so much more nonsense into the mix when, like Don just said, you're 85 years old and you need a wheelchair to get on a plane? No problem, pal. We got people at the terminal right at the gate. We'll wheel you right into the airplane, plop you down in your seat, and when you get to where you're going, we got an airline attendant waiting for you with a wheelchair to pop you back out. No worries whatsoever. But with a cruise line, oh my gosh, you have a sniffle, oh, we got to stop everything. I mean, it's just getting kind of ridiculous.
No, there's a lot of good that both of you guys said there. I mean, think about your doctor scenario. The doctor gives you a note that the cruise line accepts that says you are healthy, and then you go on the cruise ship and you get sick. Then who do you really sue? Well, my doctor said I was healthy. The cruise ship made me sick. I think the challenge here is it's the challenge all the way through the cycle. Who eventually will take responsibility for all of it? And again, what doctor is going to sign a note if he's on the hook and you get everybody sick on a cruise ship? What and the cruise line? I really think. I think whatever you present them, there'll probably be some sort of standard, but their big goal is to say, look, they had a note. They said they were okay, and now they can't sue us, right? So I do think that a lot of it is CYA stuff. You guys got CYA in Canada? Yeah, so I think a lot of it is CYA stuff, and everybody's going for it. Everybody's trying to CYA. And I think that's the problem that we're running into. That's why the CDC says, hey, you guys make up the procedures, because then we can say yes or no and then just say your procedures were bad. And the thing about getting on the plane, getting on the theme park, this is what I wonder. I don't know what jurisdiction the CDC has in those matters. So to me, it's one of those deals. You ever run into somebody that only has a little bit of power, like Barney Fife? Like you only got power over a certain thing, and that's the thing you're going to exert power on? I don't know if the states are deciding that theme parks could be open, if the states are determining if some other part of the federal government's determining the airlines can be open. But I do know that the gatekeeper for the cruise line is the CDC. And, I said it a while ago, it didn't seem like anything was happening, that they were just waiting out this no-sell order. And at least, there's some indication that they're talking with each other, but I'm really concerned. I mean, we're only, what is today? The 9th, the no-sell order ends in 15 days, and I haven't heard anything out of anybody. And so, it's very challenging when the cruise lines are like, we're going to open up in September, and there's so much up in the air. Who would have thought that this time last year, this is what we would be talking about?
Oh, I know, right?
It's crazy. Well, Bruce, I asked Don this question. What's the story that has been most impactful to you during any of this? Is there anything, we may have talked about it already, but is there a story that keeps coming up to you that you really think is a big problem with what we got going on?
Well, I tell you, I marveled when it all came down. I mean, when the whole thing came crashing down in February, March, the lockdown started off, and I saw what New York State did with Governor Cuomo, and how New York City got shut down while it was exploding with cases. I mean, it was just a horror show. And I was marveling at the healthcare workers who were, putting their lives on the line to look after people. And we were getting these statistics, these horror statistics, just terrible. And of course, everywhere in the world, everything was going the same direction. It was just getting worse and worse and worse. And here in Creston, in British Columbia, we did our shutdown as well, and that type of thing. But then within a few weeks, within a month or so, just as New York was topping out, we started hearing these stories about U.S. states wanting to open up again. And to me, I thought, I have got to be living in a bizarro world, because I cannot believe I'm hearing this kind of news. And little by little, certain states started opening up. And as each day went by, I noticed the New York number coming down, coming down, coming down. I was cheering it on. And it got to the point where New York came way down the other side. And everything that the governor said would happen if everyone played along happened. If you stayed on lockdown and you observed the rules, wore a mask, did the social distancing, the numbers would really drop off. And sure enough, they were able to shut down the convention center, hospital at the Javits Center. They were able to send the Navy ship back to the U.S. Navy, get it out of the New York Harbor. Everything was working out. And now here we are, July the 9th, or whatever the day is. And what are we looking at? We're looking at New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, the Northeast, way down in their counts. They've really nailed it down. Canada has been able to bring the count way, way down. And where is it out of control? In Florida and Texas and California, Arizona, the southern states, the ones that wanted to open up the quickest, they either didn't lock down all the way in the first place, and they wanted to loosen it up as quickly as possible. And I, as a cruiser, am upset because I know I can't get on a cruise ship in Miami unless Miami is cleaned out. The epicenter of the virus for the United States of America is Miami. It's
Yeah.
the epicenter. 10, 11,000 cases a day. I mean, what are they thinking? I'm so disappointed at how this has evolved, because the best medical system in the world is in the U.S. and the smartest medical people are certainly in the USA among many other countries. But the United States medical system has really got its act together at the forefront. And here we have 50 states that are acting like trying to herd cats. You can't herd cats, and it's just out of control. We've talked about this on this telecast, the word taking control or leadership, and there isn't anyone taking this thing by the reins and holding it in, and it's out of control. So Galveston, there's no sailing out of Galveston. Texas has gone crazy. Sailing out of LA, Long Beach, San Diego, forget about it. Seattle hasn't been. There's a chance of a cruise ship going into Seattle with Washington State's problems, and now Florida, which is the home to the busiest cruise ports in the world, off limits. And so as a cruiser, and as a YouTube creator, I'm asked every day, multiple times, when do you think we'll be able to go cruising again? And I can't tell you. I can't tell you when I can get in my car and drive 3 miles south of my house to the U.S. border and be able to cross it, because I can't get into the USA, and no one from the USA can come here because it's shut right down. And in Canada, the talk is there won't be Canadians entering the U.S. until at least next January, and that is even shaky at this point. So, what are the snowbirds going to do in Canada? They're not going to be able to go to the USA this year for a winter holiday. No cruising. It's the most disappointing part of the whole story for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been interesting sitting here in Florida. We made the decision to move here right before everything went sideways. We're still happy that we moved here, but it's been yeah, Don says great decision, right? And I do have a question about good decisions, but it's been really challenging here because we did see New York go through its challenges, and the way I look at it as an observer is that the virus entered the United States primarily through airplanes. So if you look where the early outbreaks were, these were places where there were international airports, and because of the lockdown, people didn't travel, and we did a good job of keeping those isolated to those areas, and then those areas took care of it. But you just looked at the map, like the counts were down through middle America, the counts were down in the South through all of that isolation time. And I just kept telling Jenny, as soon as they open up and people can travel, it only takes one person to go and kind of start the bonfire. And I really do think that's what you see. We've had some major holidays that happened. I think Memorial Day kicked off and people started traveling, 4th of July. And it was like a powder keg of just the one person it took to spark it off everywhere. And so now you see all these infections on the rise, and that's what really scared me as I started to track along with the CDC no-sell date. How is the CDC, who's been so restrictive, how are they in good conscience going to say, well, we got more cases than ever, let's open it up? I just don't see how it's going to happen. And so I will lament with you, Bruce. I will share in that I think that, the numbers have to go down before cruising begins, at least in North America. That's my opinion. I know it's not always a popular opinion, but I don't see how cruising is going to start again until those numbers get taken care of. Quick shout out to Steve Bartlett. Thank you so much for the super chat. I did add some more volume to my mic. I hope that is better. Let me know if you can hear that. But a lot of people in the chat tonight don't really have a chance to say hello to everybody. But if you guys want to throw some questions down there, put a big Q in front of it in the chat. If you got any questions for us around cruise news, I'm trying to think any other topics that have really. Well, you know what? I wanted to talk a little bit about cruise ships getting scrapped. Don, what do you think about this? Do you think this is just a scramble to spend less money? It makes me sad when you hear that a 16-year-old or 18-year-old cruise ship with no balconies, Bruce, gets scrapped. Oh wait, they have balconies on the Oceana. Never mind. But what Don? What do you think? Like, do you think we're going to lose a lot of? Here's the question. Let me form the question better. How much of this? How much of the old fleet do you think we'll lose? Speculating. And do you see any cruise lines folding into the other ones? We've reported a couple bankruptcies for small cruise lines, nothing big. Do you see any combining of the cruise lines, and how much of the fleet do you think we're going to lose in this pandemic?
As far as being folded into other cruise lines, I think they will fold first and go under. Because what cruise line wants to take on more cruising right now when there's no cruising going on?
Right.
And that's probably the reason a lot of these ships are being scrapped right now. If you have the brand new ships just coming online, like the Enchanted Princess for Princess Cruise Line coming up, you have the Mardi Gras, you have what's the new Royal Caribbean ship there that's being built?
Odyssey.
Odyssey. So they have these brand new ships that they're bringing out one or two a year, and some of them are planned to be built for the next 3 years. If there's going to be a real slow, gradual buildup back to your industry, they're not going to come in at 23 billion cruisers in their first year when they start cruising again. They're going to come in at like 9 billion and then work their way up. So I think they're going to get rid of their older ships, the ones that they don't really need anymore, the ones that cost more, the ones that need refits, and they're just going to go with the newer ships and the ones they already have coming online. And that way they can mitigate some of the expense as much as they can. Unfortunately, when cruising starts, the 338 cruise ships that are out there, they're not sailing all at once. We'll be lucky in the first year to have half back on the ocean.
Yeah.
Bruce, I know you're a financial guy. You actually have a second YouTube channel about the stock market. As these cruise lines start to divest themselves of assets like cruise ships, is this purely a money play? And the stocks have been up and down, right? They very low. They went into the mid-20s. They've settled back down into the mid-teens. Do you see this as what's going to happen? I know it's all speculative with the market, but do you think we see more cruise ships run out of credit, or more cruise lines run out of credit, start selling off cruise ships? And what do you think this is going to do with the stocks?
Well, the good news for the big three cruise lines, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Carnival, being publicly traded, they've been the darlings of Wall Street up until a few months ago. And there are bankers lined up to lend these guys money. They were fairly well capitalized right up until early this year when everything was running just fine. They were so well capitalized, they've been buying back their shares to keep their floats down. But when they realized, we're shut down here for a while, the first thing they did, which was the wisest move, all three of them did immediately, is they tapped their existing lines of credit to the tune of about $1.5 to $3 billion each cruise line. Within 2 weeks, they nailed that. They took those loan offers right away. Then they went back to their bankers and said, let's make some more deals. We want to consolidate our ships. We've got billions of dollars of value in our ships. Let's tap some more cash to make sure we're all through 2020 and into 2021. The bankers, to their credit, immediately went on, got on their phones and got a hold of the pension funds and the mutual funds and all the hedge funds, and they raised another probably $12 billion for the three cruise lines in total. The next move that was done was the countries of Germany, France, Finland. These are where the shipbuilding yards are. They are so interrelated and interconnected with regard to the European Union that when a ship gets built in Finland, the parts for that ship are manufactured all over Europe. And so there are European jobs on the line for every cruise ship that gets assembled in Italy and Finland, Germany, you name it. And these countries have organized what are known as export loan facilities to allow the cruise line to borrow cash to build the ship, but not make payments on it until they take delivery of it. And that guarantees these countries all these jobs and all these spin-off jobs. And the countries of Germany, France, and others have already stepped up with the cruise lines and have, in effect, deferred loan payments on probably 50 or 60 existing ships that had been taken delivery of in the last 5 years. All of those ships aren't being paid for the rest of this year. They've just taken all the payments for this year and added it on to the end of the contract for another year. So let's just extend the loan and make it a 21-year loan instead of a 20-year loan. Smart moves by countries, by bankers in Wall Street, and the cruise lines. That's all great. But all of that works if cruising starts again towards the end of this year or early next. But if we don't have a vaccine and we don't have the virus under control in certain areas, specifically now the US, we're going to, like Don said, we're going to start with 40, 50 ships, maybe for the first 6 months. And it might take a year to a year and a half to get the whole fleet back up and running again. And by that point in time, the three major cruise lines may have to yet again go back to Wall Street and tap cash. And they're now, the last loans they've taken out, they're paying interest rates of around between 10 and 12%. The next round of financing they go for is going to be 14 to 18% because Carnival just 2 weeks ago got rated as junk. The bonds that Carnival issues are rated as junk bonds, less than BBB, which means a lot of mutual funds and pension funds are not allowed to buy the debt. So even if Carnival wanted to raise $1 billion, offer 16% interest, the California Teachers Pension Fund is not allowed to buy it because it's under a BBB rating. And this means the cost of capital goes even higher. And there's a point in time where Carnival is going to say, okay, gee, we take the Carnival Horizon, put the ship back in the water with paying passengers. We might only have 2,500 passengers on the ship instead of the 4,000 we normally have. We got to bump our prices to cover that shortfall. But the second shortfall we have is the cost of being a corporation is now much more expensive because we used to pay 2 to 4% interest rates on the old bonds we had. Now we're paying 12 to 18% interest on the billions of debt we've taken on. We've got to bring in even more money per passenger just to pay the bills. The first payment you make as a publicly traded corporation are your bondholders. Your employees you pay last. You pay the bondholders first because if the bondholders don't get paid, they seize the ship or the assets and you're out of business instantly. And so these three cruise lines at the moment are funded, and this is July 2020. They're good for another year, I would say, till next July. But between now and the end of this year, all three cruise lines are going to have to decide, do we go back to the market again and bring in, say, $2 to $4 billion each on top of it? Because in the case of Royal Caribbean, they're burning $9 million a day to not do anything. They're burning $9 million a day. So this is what they're up against right now.
The value proposition is strong, right? We see this industry making money hand over fist when it's running unimpeded. And I to your point, the question is, when is the impediment removed? And if that runway is too long, maybe the value proposition goes away. Do you see the stock just continuing to, a lot of people like to jump in, buy it, then sell it. Do you see it ever dropping back down to that $8 mark? Do you see it going up into the 30s?
I see it going down.
We got another $8?
I think all three cruise line shares are going to hit new lows. And I don't want to say it, but I have to say it because there is zero income coming in. There is zero prospects of income coming in. When they can sail again, as Don so correctly said, they might have 10% of their fleets sailing for the first 3 months because everyone's going to put their toe in the water just to see how things are going. Because Miami might allow a cruise ship in and out, but Grand Cayman, where that ship is heading for the Cayman Islands, they may not allow cruise ships in for another year. They're so finicky over there with 60,000 people. One case of COVID will shut that island right back down. They just don't need a cruise ship to survive. So the cruise lines are going to start with 10, 15, 20% deployment. And if the CDC says, yeah, you can sail, but you can't sail with more than 50% capacity, I see cruise ships then sailing to not lose money. I don't see them sailing to make money. I see them sailing to not lose money. But for Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Carnival, any of their subsidiary lines, in order for them to not lose money, sailing at 50% capacity, every ship's got to be sailing that's capable of sailing. That means they'll just break even. The problem there is that we might be talking about the end of 2021 by the time we get to everybody sailing with all their ships. And that, again, is still saying a lot about perhaps a virus having been approved, a vaccine being approved, and anti-vaxxers taking the needle. I mean, we've got that issue.
Yeah.
There's so much against the cruise lines that the clock is the biggest enemy they have right now, time. And they're good for the next 6 months, but I don't like their chances of being back in business to a satisfactory way until latter half of 2021. And between now and then, I think the investment community and what I call the street, the average player of the stocks, they're going to sit there and go, wait a minute, the California Teachers Pension Fund, they can't buy the bonds for Carnival. Why would they even hold the stock? Why would they hold stock in a junk-rated company that isn't going to be flowing any positive cash flow? There could be major pension funds in the next few weeks and months slowly but surely, getting rid of their shares of these cruise lines until those cruise lines prove to them that they're back in business and that they're back up and running. And at that point, hopefully the ratings will improve. But it could well be, guys, that the shares hit a new low, not like an overnight shot like we had back in March, but a slow, just grinding, lower lows and lower highs. It's down 2 steps, one up step, down 2 steps, one up step, and it'll go for months and months and months and months. And if the CDC comes out and says next sale date, a drop dead sale date is February the 15th, 2021. What's going to happen?
It'll move down for sure. So I did want that bad news, Bruce, and I did want you to deliver it. And I think the news is I think what you're saying is very accurate. And so how do we silver lining this? Again, I think we have to return to cruising. Don, what's the silver lining? I got Bruce to give me the bad news. Maybe you give me the good news.
Well, the good news is that we might be suffering right here in the United States and Canada right now, but there are places around the world that are starting to go. There's cruises out to Fiji that are starting up. The river cruises in Europe have opened up. There's now cruises through Norway. There's cruises going on for the British Isles. Cruises started in Germany now. So there's more and more opening up in other places. We have Genting cruise lines in Asia starting up. So the more they open up, the more we can see what happens. And if nothing drastic happens, then that kind of proves that things are working and they can actually make cruising safe again. But here's a question I got for you guys there. What do you think the CDC is going to do with the no sail order? What's your honest thoughts?
I've got 2 schools of thought on it. So I was talking to Jenny about it today. We've got 15 days. They can either extend the no sail order right now, and that would be interesting if they put another 100 days on it or just cut off 2020 altogether. That's something that could happen. But because CLIA has put out that September the 15th date, I think they can let the no sail order expire, knowing that the cruise lines aren't going to cruise again. Now, we don't know what that's going to mean for Bahamas Paradise. I talked about that the other day. They're ready to go the 25th of July. But if the CDC lets that no sail order expire, then that leaves a runway for the cruise lines to come up with their regulations, to submit it to the CDC by August the 31st, and then possibly sail again on the 15th of September. I still think it's not a big enough window to get going again. But what could happen is they could, on the heels of getting those recommendations, depending on what's going on in the country, depending what's going on in Florida, they could extend it at that time. So I think it's going to happen one or two ways. They will extend before it expires, which might be easier from a procedures perspective. It's just filing a piece of paper to extend, or they may let this one expire and then go through the whole process of establishing another no sale prior to the CLIA date. Those are my two predictions. Not really sure how close those would be, but I do believe that those are the options. It wouldn't surprise me if they let it expire only to put it back into place before the CLIA date happens. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, three things. One, I think they could match the CLIA date and just go to September 15th. The date's already out there. It wouldn't cause any harm to anybody because, CLIA has already announced it. Two, they could play a game where they go 30 days beyond that. They could just say October 15th and then look to CLIA to adjust their date to either match it to October 15th or to hop skip over that beyond. Or the third one they could do is the magical date of November the 3rd is on a lot of people's minds right now. And it could well be that they decide that until November 15th, there won't be any sailing, knowing that when the 15th of November arrives, by the time it arrives, there should be certainty with respect to the future of what's happening in Washington. We talked earlier about these airlines, how they're still being allowed to fly during the entire pandemic. The airlines have been allowed to fly in the USA. One wonders, why can hotels and airlines operate and cruise ships not? And I think the answer is, how many lobbyists have you got? I think the airlines have got just as many lobbyists in Washington as some of the other heavy players, where the cruise lines just aren't, that don't have as deep pockets when it comes to the lobbying budget. And so for the CDC, they may not want to cause, a big kerfuffle. So maybe just go to September 15 and leave it with the CLIA right now, or hop skip over them a little bit by 30 days and see what the CLIA does, CLIA, and or go to November 15 and then determine from there what happens, because there could be big changes. There might not be big changes come that date.
Interesting. Don, what's your take? What's the hot take, man? Are they going to extend before it expires, or what do you think?
Well, okay. As far if they hop skip 30 days after the 15th of September, they are just reconfirming my opinion that they have something against cruise lines. Because CLIA's gone out and all these cruise lines have now done all the work to rebook passengers and rearrange their ships. I got notices all week about Princess Cruises leaving Vancouver and now starting in Seattle, and changes all these different places to accommodate this. And then they, instead of just saying, okay, we'll go to the 15th, they come out and they say, we're going to go to the 15th of November. Now we have to cancel all these cruises again, and and the stock market's going to plunge down even further. So that would prove to me that they are vindictive for some reason against cruise ships, and I will absolutely call them out on it if they do that. If they go till the end of the year, I can honestly say I'm not surprised, because first of all, a lot of things will be decided by then. We'll have gone through the flu season in the fall and see what happens with the pandemic, what's going on, and the way the cases are still rising so much right now in North America. They can legitimately have an excuse to do it. But to just go over by 30 days, that would be a jerk move. And, just go to the 15th and play. They can always extend it again, right? That's what they've been doing all along. So that's not a problem. To not extend it, to just let it go, then you run the risk of a cruise line coming out and going, you know what, we're going to do a transatlantic now, and we're going to stop in Miami on the way with the transatlantic. We're not starting here, but we are going to end there before that date that they want that to happen. And then what do? You can't just bring that one ship. Well, wait a minute. There's no sale order. Are you issuing a no sale, another no sale order? Tell us why. So I think there's no way they're not extending this. The funny thing is that they haven't said a word. We're in the month that this is supposed to end. We haven't heard a peep from the CDC. Not a word about anything. And that's scary. I am so afraid they're going to come out and say, we'll see you in 2021.
Mm. It definitely could happen. Yeah, it's scary stuff. Well, guys, we've done well over an hour. I've enjoyed talking about the news with you guys. And one more super chat there. Thank you, WinMac, for the super sticker. I tell you what, I see a question at the very bottom of the chat. Will you and Don go to Shanghai again? If all this was not an issue, I would go to Shanghai. It was a interesting, once in a lifetime kind of thing. I wouldn't not go to Shanghai. Don, would you go to Shanghai again?
I would, and I would especially. I will go back to Japan
Yeah.
as soon as I
Out
can.
of
I
that
love.
trip, yeah, out of that trip, I would love to go and spend I'd love to go spend a week in Japan, something like that. Bruce, what's your bucket list cruise? Anywhere special you haven't been that you'd really like to go?
Yeah, Australia, New Zealand. I would really love
Mm.
to be down under. Certainly, certain places in Asia I would like to enjoy. But I tell you, I'm ready for any cruise. I'll tell you right now, I'm ready. Panama Canal, a cruise in Northern Europe into Norway, the fjords, and the British Isles. Man, I'm wide open. No question about it. Wide open.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think that's what's going to keep cruising alive. I know I talk in these platitudes sometimes, but there's a lot of people like us that love cruising, that are going to wade through the frustration and the fatigue and everything that's coming along with these challenges. I'm just here, fingers crossed, hoping the cruise lines can hold out, keep their money in line and go cruising again. Always having good thoughts for this vaccine, and maybe the thing will just disappear. I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But hey, a big thanks to both of you guys. Again, I can't say enough. You guys know Don Terrace from Don's Family Vacation. You got to subscribe to this guy. He comes at you with stuff daily, always very informed and a very good take on what's going on in cruising. And the same with Bruce. I remember when Bruce used to do a live stream every day, and then 2 days a week he would do 2 live streams, very dedicated to that cruise life, very dedicated to what's going on in cruising. So a big thanks to both of you guys for coming out and talking the news, and I would love to do it again. Thank you guys so much.
Sounds
You
good.
bet.
It was a pleasure being here, and nice seeing you again, Bruce. I haven't seen you in a while since we did the live stream together that time, the recording.
I know. I'm gonna get you on my channel for sure.
Anytime,
guys,
buddy. Anytime.
Hang with me. I'm going to say goodbye to the crowd, and then we'll talk after. But I'll kick it over here. A couple more super chats in the house tonight. Sarah Phillips, thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks for always being supportive, and thanks for your help as an admin. I see my wife, the lovely Jenny B, working the wrench tonight. I hope you didn't get out of line. She'll smack you down. And Meg W with the super sticker. Thank you guys so much. Hey, this was just an impromptu thing on a Thursday. I'm so thankful that these guys came along to talk to us. It's a different way to get the cruise news. I hope you enjoyed the takes. Please leave some comments when this video goes live. Let us know what you think. Maybe we can do something like this again. My name's Tony for Lido Loca. Make sure you go subscribe to Don and Bruce. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.